Miguel, bueno, que es experto en marketing, ha trabajado para varias empresas, ¿vale? Varias multinacionales, para ellas, si no me equivoco, una de ellas es Coca-Cola, ¿no? Creo que es responsable, en cierto modo, de grandes cuentas, ¿no? de marketing, y tiene experiencia en varios países, ¿vale? En España, por ejemplo, ahora nos comentaba que de Costa Rica, y bueno, que simplemente que a ver todo lo que os puede enseñar y trasladar todo eso que hemos visto teórico, que vemos en las clases, pues ver lo que es hacer el día a día, ¿vale? Y nada, pues en primer lugar yo creo que voy a dar un aplauso. Cimiento, venga.
Okay, so why don't we do this in English? Everybody okay with it? Okay. There's something I speak too fast sometimes. If there's something you don't understand, you stop me, you ask me to repeat it, I'm happy with that. And then the other thing is, this is much more fun if you stop me, you disagree with me, you ask me questions, and then rather than me talking, that is more. So let me tell you a bit about what I've done, not because it's that important, but because it's going to give you a bit of perspective of why do I think the way I do. I started my career, I'm an industrial engineer. You wonder why is an engineer doing marketing? Well, that is the beauty of what you encounter in your life. You're going to study one thing, and chances are you may be doing something else. It might be different if you're a doctor, because if you're a doctor, you're not going to be doing other things. And if you're an engineer, I'm not going to be a doctor. But that's one learning. You're going to work on whatever you like. 96, I moved to Denmark. Long story. But I went to Denmark and worked in a Danish company working for IT. I was the computer guy. And then I started working a bit further up, and I became the AT manager within 5 years' time. And then Coca-Cola called me. That was in 2001, if I remember right. And they needed somebody to run IT, to run the computer systems in the Nordic region. This is Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and the Baltic republics. So yes, you know, who says no to a company like Coca-Cola with the international? I had a very clear idea in my mind that I wanted to do something international, go to different countries and work all around the world, because there is something incredible on learning from different cultures, applying what you know in different environments, and learning to forget what you know and start from scratch and learning once again. So I did that. Later on in about that time, in 2007, I had the best boss of my life, and he said, "What do we do marketing?" And I said, "Stafford, I know nothing about marketing." And he said, "Marketing is actually easier than you think. It's a lot of common sense, and your knowledge in technology is going to help us a lot." And this is because this is 2007. The internet was already big enough to be an important part of brand building. You couldn't talk to your consumers if you were not present online. So that was the idea of the Coca-Cola company starting to be present online. I was one of the 3 people running the digital marketing department out of the office in London. And we did that for 3 years. Really interesting. It was really tough moving from IT and then suddenly talking to marketing agencies and managing budgets that were crazy in terms of numbers. I've never done that. But it was really, really interesting. That was when I realized that my career was turning in a way that I had never expected. 2010, somebody called me from Rio de Janeiro and said, "Miguel, we need somebody to run digital marketing in the company in Brazil. Are you willing to do it?" This was a rainy morning in January in London, and the idea of working in Rio de Janeiro next to the beach with digital marketing, it took me 10 minutes to say yes. Next morning I was on a plane on the way to Rio, and that was my next chapter. I was there for about 7 months. I was covering the maternity leave of a friend of mine, of a colleague, that she had a baby and they needed somebody to replace her during that time. So that was my move to Latin America. Again, I never expected that, it just happened. Then something happened in the company. They were restructuring. The big companies do this, and they kill departments and create a new one, and then jobs get eliminated. My job in London disappeared, so I had to find myself a new job. And this guy called me from Mexico and said, "There's a position open in Costa Rica to be the marketing director for the company in that region, and you're going to do it." He said on the way, he's a funny guy, he said, "You're going to do it." I said, "Well, Javier, I know nothing about Costa Rica. Where is it? You know, what countries, what brands?" And said, "Just do it, you know. San Jose is a beautiful place, got volcanoes all over, it's got good schools, you just get on a plane and do it." So I did. I trusted the guy. So I went to San Jose, lived there for about 5 years. Most wonderful time in our family, in our time. And there I was managing marketing for a big part of the business. It was about 32 different countries, mostly Spanish, but we also had some French-speaking, English-speaking in the Caribbean. So it was all the Caribbean region, Central American, and what we call Andean, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador. 80 some brands, lots of different plans, lots of different departments, a very big budget. We're running about $200 million of marketing investment. We're responsible for the investment of all of that. And again, one of these places where I learned to forget everything that I knew and start from scratch. That is something that I've learned is very healthy to do. And with the way things are changing today in the business world, if you're ready to do that, and the quicker you are able to forget what you know, without forgetting it really, but applying it to a new field, that's where magic starts to happen. But then later on in 2015, a guy from Atlanta called me and he said, we would like you to do a piece of work for the company. We've been doing social media marketing for some time, but we had some problems and it was a bit of disorganized. So he said, we would like you to come over and help us do that. So I said yes. We moved to Atlanta again. And I run digital marketing for social media for the company worldwide. So all the countries around the world, we were doing social media marketing. And we needed to, different things, put some science, structure the process a bit so it wasn't that disorganized, and somehow bring together all the marketing thinking into what the company was doing on social media. So as you see, it's a combination of technology, digital, and marketing thinking. And that's what you're going to see on the presentation. So when Carlos told me, let's have a chat about marketing, come and tell the students your experience and what I have learned, I thought about, okay, so if I only have an hour or two, what do I tell this guy? Something that there's one thing you picked up from my career, what would it be? So I've tried to condense my entire career in about an hour. I leave aside many things, and we'd love to discuss it more in detail if you want. But basically, this is the basic of the thinking of a brand like the Coca-Cola brand. It's not only Coca-Cola, it's Fanta, it's Sprite, the company has over 200 different brands. And each one with its own positioning, its own structure, strategy. So everything that I've learned, I've tried to condense it into a few thinking points. So to begin with, what is marketing? Someone, tell me, what is marketing in your mind? Doesn't need to be right, just what you think about marketing. You need to tell me, Okay, go.
I'll say it's the art of trying to convince people to buy your service or product.
Good. Something else. What else?
Pay the right price to the right customer at the right time.
Right. It's creating
Creating a necessity.
necessity. That's a very good point. What else? Okay, so all of those things are right. The definition of marketing could be a book long. The way I see marketing, I'm going to try to simplify it to the very bottom of it, the way I see marketing. So think about a product. Let's think about a pair of shoes. What is a pair of shoes for? Let's say sports shoes. It needs to be flexible enough so you can do sports with it. It needs to be comfortable. It needs to hold for at least a year with normal activity. So there needs to be some quality to it. There needs to be some design, the way that it looks. You don't want to go around with an ugly shoe. It needs to be somehow nice to look at, right? So all of those things are the product properties. If you think about it, to produce a product like that on mass production, package it and distribute it, you could get something pretty decent for about $20, right? Everybody agrees with that? You could buy a shoe that's more or less okay. No fancy thing, but something that works just as well. But then you have something like that cost $80. If you look at the product characteristics, they are probably the same. I mean, you could argue that the design, this one is nicer than the other one, but pretty much, if you know nothing about the way that it looks, just hold the product, you would say, I could use that one or that one, make no difference. The difference between that and that's marketing. That is the process of building a brand for which you can charge a premium on a product. So this is the value that a marketing department creates for a company. One thing is what you pay for, another thing is what it costs. That is the difference. And in here, it's everything that you guys have said, plus a bunch of other things. Right? When you do it really, really, really well, you can do that. You become a popular icon. Your products, your brand, they enter popular culture, in this case movies. This is Back to the Future. I don't know if you've seen, it's an old movie from the time I was young. But the shoes that tied themselves, now you can buy them. Nike worked for a few years on building something that worked like that, and when it did, they sold the thing for $37,000. No? So this is good marketing, this is genius marketing. Right? So that is the idea of marketing. Marketing is the process of attaching values, emotional values for the most part, into a product. That is the work of marketing. Right? So now let's try to break that into pieces. There's a company called Interbrand. Basically what they do on a yearly basis is they rank all the brands in the world based on their value. They put a value to the brand, not to the product, to the brand. This is the latest one published for 2018. And towards the top, there's many of them. But let's take a look at the very top. Let's say the top 10. What do you see in there? Take a look and tell me some conclusions that you see out of those brands. Why do you think is that?
Because the tech industry is rising.
It's everywhere. We have tech all over us all the time, right? Tell me more about it. What do you think about other brands up there?
They're all extremely popular.
They are something that we use daily.
So they're present, in your daily lives. What else?
They have really distinguished trademarks.
When you say trademark, what do you mean with that?
Like when you see the logo, you obviously know which app you're talking about.
Very well. So they have a strong visual identity, is
Yeah.
the term that we use in marketing to refer to them. So those logos, you will be able to see them right away.
And they are all multinational organizations.
What else? Take a look at the percentages. This is the variation versus last year.
Amazon.
Look at Amazon, growing at 56%.
Jeff Bezos.
Coca-Cola going down to -5. Coca-Cola used to be at the very top year after year after year. And I think it's about 3 years ago we started, I still say we, but I don't work for Coca-Cola anymore. We started going down. Think about, if you look at, you said about technology, but out of this, let's say brands that are 10, 15 years old versus old brands. So this one's relatively new, this is new, well, sort of. This is 130 years old. Not so new, not new definitely, this is an old brand as well. Facebook is new, McDonald's is not. Intel, so-so. IBM is an old company, BMW is an old company, Disney. So the newer companies are going to the top very quickly. And there's a reason why. One of them is because they're so pervasive, they're in our daily lives all the time. And the other thing is because they have done things consistently. They have their marketing in order. Let me show you a couple of, this is year 2000, year 2010. Take a look at the difference. Year 2000, Coca-Cola was at the top, 2010, same thing. IBM, Microsoft towards the top. Google was starting to show up here. Here is not even there. So 10 years it went from not being on the list to being on the 4th position. You have all big companies like General Electric here. Nokia. You guys are too young to remember Nokia, but they were the first mobile phones in the industry. And they were up there. They have disappeared out of the ranking. And today, I don't even know if they are in the top 100. That company kind of vanished from the mindset of people. McDonald's still there. AT&T, I mean, this is a global study, and this is an American company. It does have a presence globally, but not significant. Marlboro, tobacco company, imagine that. 2000. It was one of the more popular brands, top 11. So this gives you an idea of how the flow of the value of brands goes over time based on what they do. And a lot of that is the product, but a lot of it is the marketing. So let's take a look at let's take a look at the previous one, number one. We're going to take a look at what Apple has done to become number one, and why today depends on the day, but right now it's shifting between Amazon and Apple. It's the most valued company in the world. Apple became, in history, the most valuable company in the world. I think it was sometime last year, and it continues to be. You know, the power of Apple is today, the amount of cash they have as a company, and the value of the brand is just mind-blowing to them. But there is a reason for that. Do you guys know about the history of Apple, Steve Jobs, and what he did? So Steve was, in my mind, probably the most genius marketing person ever, apart from being technology. Steve was fired from Apple at one point, and then he came back. And not only he came back as one of the most successful comebacks of all time in the industry, but he also put in motion a marketing exercise that today puts Apple where it is, not only in people's minds, but in their life. Back in when this happened, I think I would say late 90s, beginning of 2000, Apple started to do things that people had never seen before. I don't know if you guys saw when the iPod was launched. The iPod changed the industry, the music industry forever. You know, those white headphones, which today are so common, back then they were an icon of so many things. They had a meaning. It told something about you. You were telling people, if you were with an Apple product, you were telling people who you were, what you stood for. It meant creativity, it meant freedom. It meant so many things out of a technology product. Remember, you know, back in the days, you could buy different MP3 players, so basically, it's an old term, but in the old days, you would download the music, put it in your computer, and then move it from your computer to your player. The iPod changed all of that. And then came the iPhone. And what am I going to tell you about the iPhone? You know, in the old days, a telephone was a device to make phone calls and send and receive text. I don't need to tell you what it is today. And that is all thanks to when the iPhone was launched. So all of that, yes, there's a number of products. Yes, there's the most advanced technology probably in the consumer industry time after time. Then there came a lot of competition. Huawei probably is definitely one of the very top ones. Samsung. There's been many other companies that have followed. But the one that kickstarted everything was that guy. As part of the change in the industry, he released a piece of advertising. It was a TV ad, which to me means or condenses the philosophy of Apple back in the day and reflects many of the things that we're going to be talking about later on. Probably you've seen it, but let's play it again.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
So who would like to be represented by what he described there? If somebody had to describe you, who would like to be described like one of the people in that commercial? Be honest. Come on, I was expecting everyone to respond.
Oh wait, I don't know.
So that is the philosophy of Apple back in the days. So that thinking about becoming a genius, about not being content and being a disruptor of everything you do, that is what they brought into their products and their thinking. And when they did that, everybody wanted to be that person. Steve changed the concept of an insight. You guys have studied about the idea of an insight? An insight is something that you can observe within your consumer landscape. You find something that is hidden in behavior. It's not an observation. I mean, if you say everybody likes to be on the mobile phone, that is not an insight, that is an observation. An insight is that people sometimes use their phones to track their physical activity. And there, you have an idea that you can bring into a product, right? So that is sort of an insight. Steve transformed what an insight is. He could see things before they happened. He created a need for a product that nobody thought they needed. Nobody needed to hear their music and have 1,000 records on their pocket and listen to it on their way to school or to work. Nobody needed that because the product didn't exist. What Steve did, he could read society and he could read the need for a product. When he created the iPad, that product didn't exist. No company made something equivalent to an iPad. But he saw the need for that product to be part of everyday life. And he created a product. Once the product was created, everybody wanted to buy it and have one.
But he saw the need of a product and he made the product, or he made the product and then he made the need?
The first one. You first see the need based on the insight, and then you create the product which addresses the need.
But you can create first the product and then create the necessity.
Typically happens the other way around. So in business, in marketing, you always start with the business need. So for Apple, they needed to sell more products. And more products meaning sometimes you create a new product category, a product that doesn't exist. So what the company does is they do studies and they identify a need. And that need gets transferred to the product development, which produce the product. Producing something and then hoping that people need it normally doesn't work.
I think the reason because Jessica is asking, because we study marketing with the IB, we see product orientation and we have market orientation. Yep. And it looks like they give an example that maybe one product from Apple is more like product orientation. They create a product and then the people want to purchase it. And it looks like they don't prepare so much market research before. That's the reason because she's asking.
Right. Okay, so in the case of Apple, the market research is so brilliant that it becomes so obvious afterwards. You know, when you're working, if some of you end up working in marketing, and you talk with an agency, with a client, with your own company about an insight about a product, an insight becomes obvious in retrospective. So once you know about the insight, you say, of course. But take the step before, that insight is not obvious to anyone. Right? In the case of a product, he or Apple started producing laptops. And then they introduced the MacBook Air, which was the lightest and thinnest computer in there. So that was a product-driven decision. They had a line of computers. They wanted one that was special for people on the go, people that had to carry the thing all the time, and a computer that would weigh the half of what normal laptops would do would be great. On top of that, it was beautiful. It had a design that no one had seen before. It was that thin. The day he introduced it, I don't know if you've seen the video, he came on stage with an envelope, and it looked like it had documents into it. And then he pulled out the iPod Air, the MacBook Air from the envelope. And that guy was, and also the presentations. I recommend you to watch, you'll find it on YouTube, the launch of the iPhone. What he did on that session, I was lucky to be in that session in San Francisco. It was mind-blowing what he did there. And he would give you, he would always say, and there's one more thing. And you always were expecting what came after there's one more thing, because there was so much passion into what this company was doing that everybody was just the buzz around his presentations were amazing. All of that is because of the marketing he was doing. And it was all the different components put together, bringing out the company idea to life. So the insight was one of the things. You said before, creating the need, and that's what he did. He created the need for music, for laptops, for iPads, the iPhone. It was creating a need for a device that didn't exist. He transformed the concept of that. He also created, and I think this is probably the most powerful thing, he created products that people wanted to have because the way it made them feel. You know, at that time, and even today, you buy an Apple product because it makes you feel special in a way. You know, you open the product, you have it, what it means for you to have it. Today is more common because, you know, there's a lot of people having an iPhone around, but back in the days, having a MacBook, you know, the first Starbucks in Europe, people sitting in the Starbucks with a Mac computer, they were like gods. People would look at them, you know, with envy. You know, not only you're sitting on a Starbucks, which was a cool place back then, but you're also using a Mac, and you have an iPhone next to you. That meant so much. In the tube, I remember in London, everyone takes the metro in and around the city. People wearing the white headphones, they were telling something to people. I like music, I like style. They launched a very, I don't have a picture of it here, but they launched an iPod, a music player that was a little tiny square thing about that size, and it could display on a little screen the album you were wearing. You could see people attaching the thing here to their shirt, showing people what they were listening. They wanted to see that not only they were using an Apple product, they were listening to that particular artist, because that was telling people who they were, their preferences. So the product made people feel special. Then he completely transformed packaging. I don't know if you guys open a package today, and there's thousands of videos about the opening of Apple products. Back in the days, it was the very first brand that made opening a box an event. You know, Apple has a department that designs packaging. You know, the time, you know, you cannot open an Apple box just like that. You take the top off, and then the bottom kind of slides down. It goes down because the distance between the top and the bottom of the box is specially designed to let so much air in to control the speed at which the box goes down. And this just adds to the excitement of, I want to see it, I want to see it. And that second or two that it takes the box to fall, that was, people talked about that. It was the same thing with the iPad. Computers, you know, it's a different thing, but the packaging is, the design of the packaging is just brilliant. The way the keyboard is packed, the mouse is packed, the cable around it. When you buy an iPhone and you see the way that the cable, other companies just, you know, wrap the cable, put it in plastic, off you go. These guys, they make a perfect circle with the bands of paper around it. You know, the design of these products was genius. And again, all of this contributed to what the product was. Apple stores. Back then, very few brands, I would say probably cars and clothing being probably one of the two industries, had what they call flagship stores. A store you could walk into and you could have the experience of the brand in one place. I know you've been to the Apple stores. They're more common today and they're flooded with people. But back then, when Apple was going through this transformation, Apple stores were like the churches of Apple products. You know, they had this atrium with experts talking about product, teaching people to use their programs and their you know, how to make music with GarageBand, how to design using the iPad. It was just fantastic, and it was this environment of techie people and creatives and brilliant technology where everybody wanted to be part of. Everybody wanted to go there, and the lines, people, you know, remember the first launches of Apple products, people camping outside of the store for days in a row to buy the first iPhone, the first iPad when they came out. All of that, if you think about it, you know, would you do that to just buy a phone? No, but you would do that because you're buying into the brand. To charge €1,000 versus 100, the difference of that is because all of those things that we've talked about. That is branding. That is attaching all of those values to a product. So when you do that perfectly well, and you maintain doing it perfectly well over time, you create a brand that's at the very top.
How many do you have an iPhone, by the way? Raise your hands. Wow.
So tell me, I mean, based on what we've said, tell me about brands that you like and the reason why based on what we've talked about so far. I want to get your point of view of this.
So examples of brands that you like. Come on.
Brands that
And why? Netflix. Netflix is also very close to the top on the 28.
I would say
So why do you like Netflix, and why is that a brand?
Offers more content than other platforms.
Other examples, clothing, for example. Give me a clothing brand that you love and why. You. I'm going to start pointing out now.
Adidas,
Because
it's nice. I mean, like, it's fashionable.
it's fashionable. What else?
Because you have a lot of stores in one, and because you can find the newest clothes in that company.
Okay. What do you, let's say you go to Zara, what do you, when you look at the clothing and you try them on and you buy them, what do you feel when you do that? You just do it, right? What drives you to walk into a Zara versus, I don't know, Primark?
It represents you.
Represents you, said. So the brand is something that you identify with yourself, right?
Yes.
Any other examples?
The boring company.
Boring company?
Nobody thought that.
Miguel is another marketing genius. So tell me a brand you would not buy and why. So tell me about it. Why would you not buy a Gillette or yes? Why would you do it?
I Gillette for women. No, I'm serious.
Dice el nombre, ¿no?
Así se llama Gillette for women.
So you see, there's something here. You buy a product, you prefer a product, you feel yourself identified by a product, but you really don't know why. You just do. Why do you think that happens?
Can you repeat?
Make you feel special in a way. So, in order to understand marketing, you need to go to the very, very bottom of it, and that is your brain. You need to understand how your brain works, because that explains so many things in humankind, including marketing. So the brain is the most complex organ we have in our bodies. We barely understand how it works. We have an idea of different areas, what they do and why they do it, but there is so much we don't know about the brain. Let me simplify it to a very low level to make the point that I'm going to try to make. So the brain has mainly 3 areas. Each one of those areas is more complex, you got more stuff included into that, but you could boil it down to mainly 3 areas. The first one is the core of the brain. This is the very first brain that was developed in the mammals. Before we were primate, before we were, Neanderthal, the mammals had that brain. Even today, a bird, a dog, a horse do have that brain. And that is the brain that controls all the functions on your body on which you have no control, and the reflexes. So it controls your heartbeat. That's a muscle that receives signals to pump. Your lungs to breathe. Your movements in your body, sometimes you control them, you do this with your legs, but when you're moving, you're walking around, you're not thinking first this leg, then the other one, then the other one. Your body just does it, right? It also controls the reflexes. You touch something and it's really hot, it tells your arm, get the hand out of there because you're going to get burned. It tells you this is dangerous, you need to escape. It's your survival instinct. You're in a very dangerous situation, somebody's telling you not to do something or get out of there, run. All of those things are managed by the very core of the brain, right? And we have, for the most part, no control of that. And that's the brain that all mammals have. The second brain is the one where all the emotions are. This is the limbic system. This is where we feel love, we like things or not, we sense things like love, like attraction, like rejection, fear. All of those emotions they happen on the limbic system of the emotional brain. And the third one is the one on the outer side of the brain. It's called the neocortex. It's neo because it's the newest part that humans have developed versus the monkeys. Right? Monkeys have a very tiny piece of that, but that is the part that differentiates the human from every other mammal in the world. And that is what allows you to think, to use logic, to kind of observe and draw conclusions, helps you do math, helps you memorize things. That is the more sophisticated and developed part of your brain, right? So your decision making happens in that level. You know, this is hot, I get it away. That is, you're not in control of that decision. Your brain takes it for you and sends the commands to your hand to get it out of that hot surface. The second one is where all the feelings happen. And the third one is decisions that I think and I make the decision, right? They happen in that particular order. When you're thinking about a brand, what happens is that your emotional brain is making the decision even before you're aware of that decision, and then your rational brain is giving you the reasons why. So your brain is actually in a process tricking you, it's lying to you on a decision. So you buy a product because you like it, because you love it, you love the design, it makes you feel special, you know somebody who you like, who likes it. All of those things happen in the limbic system without you knowing. And then once that decision is made, it tells your rational, that is the one you need to buy because it looks nice, because it's a good product, because it has a good price, because it's better than the other one. All of those reasons that are just hard to explain why do I like something is because they're being taken here and then sent here to be rationalized, to make some sense out of your decision. That is the way our brains work. And that is why marketing, good marketing, not all marketing, works in this area and then moves to the second one later on. Right? That is very important, and the moment you understand that, you understand how people behave, not only on business, but in society in general. Sometimes you say, how can they do that? Don't they see that this doesn't make any sense? Well, that's because the decision was made on their emotional brain, and they're now finding a reason why they took that decision. And you from the outside, you don't know the reason and you don't know the emotion, therefore you don't understand it. So that's how the brain works, and that's how successful brands work on the emotional level always, and then bring it to the next level. So if you think about the definition we gave about before, at building brands by attaching values to a product, that is the mechanism that creates that value between the $20 and the $80 and the $36. So far so good? Clear on that? Any questions? Somebody disagree with it?
I have a question. Can you make a decision based just on your emotional brain and the decision doesn't go through the rational
Yes.
brain?
Yeah. I mean, this is in general. Of course, you can make a rational decision. You can do the math and say, you know,
The other way around, like just an emotional decision without any reason behind that.
you do that every day. People fall in love with each other based on that. That's how humans work. Right, I'm going to tell you about two elements here. There is a lot of thinking behind them, and the concept can go much deeper. It's more complex, but it's important to you just to know about it. So in marketing, once you put it into application, you use frameworks, which are structures that allow you to design a brand, to say this is the things that I want to touch people's minds when I'm trying to sell them or convince them to buy my product. These are a list of emotions. There is that guy, Robert Ludnick, he designed this emotions and the level of intensity going in and out. So there is a categorization of all the emotions that humans have. Once you start mapping, then you can say, okay, so if I'm selling a product that is a tea-based drink, I'm selling products that like people to drink to be relaxed. Okay, so I don't want to just tell them I'm selling you cold tea. It needs to be a product that convinces that it's good for you, it's going to relax, Not only that, but in that relaxation moment, you're going to reconnect with yourself. You're going to disconnect from your busy day, because I know that people are burned out on busy days. All of that thinking, that is what helps you position your brand and determine the emotions that you want to touch. Those emotions, once you have them identified, you can bring them over to your communication. So on the ad that we saw before from Apple, he saw a need on people to be different, to change the status quo, to change the things that were being done and why. He wanted to give a reason to people to change that. The other framework that is really important is the hierarchy of needs. Maslow has this hierarchy. So we humans, we have needs. Some of them are very basic, like food, like care, like breathing, sleep, and so on. Then we have some more emotional ones, like the sense of belonging, the sense of being loved and loving someone. Then there's the esteem one. These are a bit more personal. The self-realization. This is when you're happy about what you've done and you feel proud about doing something. All the way to moral values and principles. You know, these are different levels. And brands, you know, a product, what we were talking about before, a cold brew tea, yes, it quenches your thirst. Yes, it relaxes you, but it makes you feel that you're taking care of yourself. When you're taking care of yourself, you feel better about yourself. And that gets you ready to take the next challenge at school, at work, whatever you do. All that hierarchy of needs, that is what helps a brand narrow down your strategy and get to the emotions that you want to tackle on people. So there's a lot of complexity on these things. These models are very complex, and at Coke we have several of these models. You have people that are sociologists and psychologists and all that, trying to structure the thinking, doing research, analyzing how people live and what they do, and transforming that into directions. So by the time you get here, your mind is already set. You know, you'll be walking around the shopping mall or browsing through Amazon or whatever site you're buying things on. And yes, you might be looking for something specific, but that something specific probably is going to be for a brand that you have already decided on. You want to buy a pair of shoes from Nike, you want to buy a shirt from Zara or whatever other brand you want to buy, or you wish you could buy that brand but don't have the money, so that is an aspirational brand for me. It's not based because the product is much better or worse than the other one, it's just because it tells you something and you want that one, and the moment I have the money, I will go in and buy it. All of those behaviors are driven by marketing. Yes, you will go into a store and you will have two products and you don't know which one. You will go for one, and that will be the design, the way that it looks, because somebody told you that that is a better one than the other one, because of the packaging. The box is very nicely well designed and you like that. So all of those decisions you're going to be making at the point of sale are going to be driven by, for the most part, your perception on a product. Yes, you'll go to the supermarket and you're looking for orange juice. If you don't have a preference, you're going to look at the price and you say, you know, it's orange juice, I'll take the cheaper one. Well, yes, I really like that one because the taste was perfect. And the taste, once you do the analysis, flavors is a very interesting thing, and I know this because I work for Coca-Cola. Flavors trigger emotions in your brain. The satisfaction that you feel when you drink something more or less sweet, with more sparkle, with more acid. All of those flavors, companies use research and testing to fine-tune the product to satisfy your needs when you're drinking a product, and that level of satisfaction that it gives you. Water doesn't have that, but you have other, you know, the reason why you pay €5 for a bottle of Norwegian water is because of the branding, it's not, and the shipping, not because it's so much better than the other one. But for example, when we did orange juice, I remember working on this project. So there's a formulation for orange juice, which is pressed oranges, and sometimes the concentration of the level of glucose, which is the sugar in the orange, will make that the taste is more acid or more sweet. The same brand selling in Europe or selling in Mexico would have to have different levels of sweetness. Why? Because consumers in Europe are less used to sweet things, and therefore if it is too sweet, it causes you too much and you don't like it. As opposed to in Latin America, where people are used to, you know, because the fruit is so mature and they like sweet things, you would have to sell products that had a higher level of glucose. Otherwise, people would think it doesn't taste well, it's too acid, I don't like it. So all those formulation adjustments is because of the effect that it causes on people's brains. Remember, the satisfaction of a product when you drink it or you eat it goes straight to your sense of pleasure, which determines which product you're going to buy.
Which percentage of people is working in psychology, inside marketing? Which percentage of people?
Depends on the size of the company. Bigger companies, they will have very good departments of, in Coca-Cola we call it knowledge and insights, which is basically a team in charge of doing research, buying research. There's companies that will do research for you, so you give them a brief and then they go out and then they map consumers, they ask them, they do testing and they tell you back the results. But a healthy marketing organization should have about 20 to 30% of people thinking about all of these things that you talked about.
So 20 to 30 people just thinking about psychology and emotions and...
A good marketing department. You have smaller companies and they will ask the agency doing the work to tell them that.
Isn't it a bit wasteful to have so many people doing like a peripheral activity? Like psychology is important for marketing, but it's not marketing. It's...
Yeah, good point, but it's even more expensive to do bad marketing. So if you do a campaign and it doesn't tell anyone anything and people don't buy your product, you've just wasted your entire marketing campaign. You could pay 10 people for 10 years to do that work, and then you correct it and you do it right from the beginning. There's also about, when you're working on an industry and on a company that is always doing the same, you accumulate knowledge. So you understand your consumers better and better and better. So the amount of analysis that you need to do is less over time. Yes, you launch a new brand, you need to do the whole thing, or your brand is losing traction. It's probably a sign that the marketing you're doing is not really good and it's failing somewhere, either on the inside to the consumer, or it's on the communication that you're doing, on the advertisement you're producing. Something is not working. So when that is happening and you see it quickly because you invest and your brand and your sales are going down, so how come? I'm investing more and less people are buying my product. There's something wrong somewhere. So you need to go in there and understand where is the problem. Sometimes the problem is a bit here and there and everywhere. And that's what marketing professionals do. They do the analysis and they say there and there and there, phase one, that is what we need to do. By the way, that is the kind of work that I'm doing now. I didn't say it on the presentation at the beginning, but I left Coca-Cola at the end of 2017. It wasn't at the very top anymore, so I said, I'm going to leave. So I left and I'm doing that. I'm for living. I go to companies and clients that their marketing is not working for some reason. And then with all the colleagues, we do an analysis of, we identify what the problem is, and then we help them solve it. Any other questions?
Could you give us one example of one company that maybe did something wrong and then you solve it? How do you solve it? Give an example, maybe a brand that we know, something that we know.
So let me see a brand that you know. We don't have any clients here in Spain, but let me give you an example of a client we're working with in the States, in the US. Right? This is a company that does snacks. They do potato chips, right? It's a brand that is very old, about 60 years old. And back in the days, in one area of the country, at the north, New York, Massachusetts, all that area of the country, they were top. People loved it. They managed to create a brand that connected with people. So 20, 30 years ago, anybody going to a supermarket to buy a pack of chips, they would buy this product. There's no question. You also have the Frito-Lay and all the other brands. This is the one they would buy. The problem is this company stopped doing marketing for a number of reasons. They decided, we have such a strong brand, we don't need to do this anymore. And they stopped doing marketing. What happens is their brand grew old together with the people getting old. So those people that 20 years ago they went into the supermarket and they went straight and picked it up for the weekend to watch the football game, today they're 60. And you know what? They have cholesterol, they have this, they have that, so they don't eat chips anymore, or eat less chips. And when they buy the product, because their family is coming over, they ask, don't you have Cheetos or Doritos or something else? And they start buying a different product. So what happens is that the brand, they stop investing into that, and you can do that for a number of years. But if you do it for too long, your brand starts to get old and eventually dies. So what this company needs now is they have a fantastic product. They only grow organic potatoes. Even back in the days, they have a process of producing those fries with organic oil. So the product is still, chips. So it's not healthy by any means, but it's as good as it can be. So they have a fantastic product and idea, but they have a very old brand. So what we're helping them do now is, okay, so your brand needs to shape up. You need to be young again, and you need to be appealing to 20 years old people, or the younger generation, because by the way, all of you eat more chips than your grandparents do. Same thing happens with the company I used to work before. All of you would drink more Coca-Cola or Sprite or Fanta or Powerade than your grandparents will do. So consumption of certain products peaks at a younger age, and then it starts going down over time. So that is what in marketing is called recruitment. You need to recruit a new generation into your brand. So you need to have younger people fall in love with your product, because once you fall in love, you will stay with that brand forever. Let me tell you a story about Diet Coke. So I think here is called Coke Light in Spain. So Coca-Cola Light was launched, it was back in the 70s or so. It was the no sugar version of brand Coca-Cola, right? And the Coca-Cola had those two products, the normal Coca-Cola Red and Coke Light. Over time, they launched Coca-Cola Zero, which also has no sugar. So now you have two products with no sugar, with slightly different taste, and the normal Coke that we've known all the time. But in the minds of the consumers, you start asking, so why is a Zero and a Light, are they the same? What's the difference between the two? Well, I tell you, the only difference is the taste. Coke Zero was formulated to taste a lot closer to normal Coca-Cola than Coke Light. Coke Light, if you drink it, it has an aftertaste that either you love it or you hate it. So for the company, what happened is that all the people that in their mid-20s, 30s, when they started worrying about how many calories do they eat and they drink, and they start worrying about the way they look, they moved to Coke Light. Over time, those people fell in love with Coke Light, and today they're 50, and they go to a bar and they drink their Coke Light. Don't give them a Coke Zero, they still want Coke Light. So now the company had a problem because we had two propositions for a no sugar product, and one of them was for the younger generation, theoretically, that Coke Zero. The older one was getting old. So what do we do now? Do we just let it grow and die together with the people that consume it? Or do we invest on making it younger again? And if you do that, you have two brands competing against each other on the same brand, same proposition. It's a no sugar product. So to make a story short, there is no easy solution to that. Right? And even today, the company is still discussing what do we do? Do we kill it? Or do we just let it grow up? Or what do you do with it? So that's an important element too. When you create a brand and you create a product, and you make that connection with people, that connection will stay on. If you do it well and the product is good enough, that emotional connection will stay on for a long time. And those decisions will stay on with people. If you become irrelevant or your products are no longer good, like Nokia, you disappear from people's minds. So let's go back to this idea of products, the functionality, and brands. So let's think about a watch. A watch gives you what? The time. Give you the date. A smartwatch does a million other things. But in essence, a watch tells you what time it is, right? So what is the difference between those two? Yes, this one has little diamonds, and probably the metal is more expensive than this plastic. This one is 10, that one is 10,000. So why people spend $10,000 to know what time it is? So why do you think somebody would spend that kind of money to know what time it is?
It's a flex.
Tell me more, why would you buy that thing instead of that one? You're in a generation that these things have shifted. So Rolex is now trying to figure out how they sell their brand to your generation. So the thing with watches is they mean nothing until you reach a certain age and probably a bit of money, and then it becomes a symbol of who you are, but more than that, what you have achieved. People buying that watch, what they're saying to the people that see their watch is, I made it. You know, I'm a successful person, I make enough money so I can buy a 10,000 euro watch. So you buy the product because of what it tells you about who you are. And that company is making money based on that concept alone. Yes, the product, the quality, the engineering. It's a product that will last your lifetime 5 times, and then you can pass it on to all the generations. But in essence, it tells you the time. That's what it does. That car, what is a car? A car is a vehicle that takes you from point A to point B, right? Do it more comfortable, more quickly, cheaper, more expensive. If you talk to somebody that has a Porsche, they'll give you a million reasons why they have it. All of those reasons are, for the most part, rationalizations of an emotional decision. You know, if you have tried to drive or ride one of those cars, they're harsh. You know, when you start getting old and your back hurts, it's very difficult to get in and even more embarrassing to get out. There's not enough room. It's expensive to run. They're noisy. They demand you a level of driving that other cars don't. There's a lot going against a sports car. But still, people, they want to buy the car because they want to tell themselves and the rest of the world, I reached the point where I'm successful enough to buy a car like this and not go in a 10,000 euro car. So branding, again. And Porsche was very clever because they made that car for most part of their history, and then they realized, hey, people are buying SUVs. So how do we twist our brand? How do we modify our brand that has always been about a sports car, fast, quick, low to the ground, to a sports utility vehicle that a mother is going to use to take their kids to school? It doesn't fit, right? So they have been able to extend the brand to appeal to a target that they didn't have before. And then they launched the Panamera, which is, you know, a sedan that people that don't like the small thing, but they don't want to be sitting up high like everybody else. They wanted an executive saloon that would keep the DNA of that brand, but behave still like a sports car. And then they realized that a lot of people wanted a Porsche, but not many people could afford it, so they launched the Boxster. Boxster was a cheaper version that is pretty much a sports car on a budget. Still a Porsche badge. And then they launched the Cayman, a bit between. So from a brand architecture strategy, they took the essence of the brand and then they expanded it to a wider consumer group. So it's the same DNA. It's still saying the same thing about you. It makes you feel special the same way, but the proposition is different based on who you are, what state in life, what needs to be how on your everyday basis. So that is another brand exercise. You take a brand that already exists and you bring it to a much wider scope. Just think about a shampoo, something as basic as the shampoo you use in the shower every day, right? There are thousands of brands. They're all telling you how clean they are and how soft your hair feels after you've taken that shower, right? So how are you going to compete with others? Just with that, what are you going to say? My product washes better than yours, or mine is more expensive but washes the same, or is cheaper, and then why do I want to buy a cheap shampoo? I want, I was to take care of myself, so why would I buy the cheapest shampoo possible? So if you don't do anything, you are competing on a commodity level. So you're selling a product and you're giving people no reason why they should buy your product versus the other. Then there's a brand called Dove, and they did an exercise, they've been doing it for a number of years, that took the concept of a brand to a different level. And they published this.
I'm a forensic artist, worked for the San Jose Police Department from 1995 to 2011.
I showed up to a place I'd never been, and there was a guy with a drafting board. We couldn't see them, they couldn't see us.
Tell me about your hair.
I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
It kind of protrudes a little bit, especially when I smile.
Your jaw.
My mom told me I had a big jaw.
What would be your most prominent feature?
Kind of have a fat, rounder face.
The older I've gotten, the more freckles I've gotten.
I would say I have a pretty big forehead.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and then they leave. I don't see them.
All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this other woman, Chloe.
Today I'm going to ask you some questions about a person you met earlier, and I'm going to ask you some general questions about her face.
She was thin, so you could see her cheekbones. And her chin, it was a nice, thin chin.
She had nice eyes. They lit up when she spoke.
Cute nose.
She had blue eyes, very nice blue eyes.
This is the sketch that you helped me create, and that's a sketch that somebody described of you.
So yeah, that's... She looks closed off and fatter. Sadder, too. The second one looks more open, friendly, and happy. I should be more grateful of my natural beauty. It impacts the choices and the friends that we make, the jobs we apply for, how we treat our children. It impacts everything. Couldn't be more critical to your happiness.
Do you think you're more beautiful than you say?
We spend a lot of time as women analyzing and trying to fix the things that aren't quite right. And we should spend more time appreciating the things that we do like.
Yeah, it is letters.
So what has Dove done on that piece of advertising? What do you think it has done?
Emotional.
So the process is they identified an insight, and the insight is that the beauty industry is forcing women, in this case, to look perfect all the time. And that puts a lot of pressure on people. Not only on this particular case with women, but in general society puts a lot of pressure on the way we look. And that pressure sometimes is overwhelming because it pushes you to be sometimes who you're not. And that puts a lot of stress on everyday life. So a thing as simple as cleaning your hair could be a commodity, or could be an act of taking care of yourself without pretending to have a magazine like hair. You know, it's a brand that accepts you the way that you are and tells you that pressure that society puts on you doesn't mean anything. Actually avoid it because it doesn't take you anywhere. What feeling do you think female will get when they're told that? It's a feeling of relief. You know, you have a product that understands how I feel, even though I'm not telling how I feel. I don't even know how I feel. I just feel pressured. You know, what Dove has done, if they have put words and ideas to an insight, to a feeling that female have, and then they have positioned their shampoo, which probably cleans just as good as many others, on an emotional level that differentiates it from the rest. You would pay €5 more for a pack of this shampoo just because it's a brand that understands you. It's talking to you and it's telling you something that it's so right. You didn't even know that you felt that way. Right? So that is a marketing exercise that brings the product from a product-specific proposition to an emotional proposition. In Coca-Cola, we used to have this model. We call it the trickle-up effect. Right? At the very bottom, you have the product. In the case of the shampoo, the way it cleans, the way it softens your hair. If it's a combined conditioner and shampoo, simpler solution. But that is just that. In here, you compete against 50 other brands. And when you're in the supermarket, it's confusing because you don't know which one to take. Your eyes go to Dove because it's playing a role in your life. No, it's part of your daily routine, it's part of your hygiene, and it's a brand that identifies and understands you, right? And that is you, but if you take it one level up, basically what Dove is telling society is, this pressure that the beauty industry is putting on you, it doesn't make any sense. You should avoid it. You should be who you are, and the beauty is within the person, not on the way it looks. So with enough momentum, it's changing a bit the way society moves. So that trickle up, when brands do this really well, that is what they do. The way Apple did this, yes, it's an iPad, yes, it's like a big iPhone, but bigger. But it allows you to do things that you couldn't do before. Children use this. My mom used it, and they used Skype, and she didn't know what video conferencing was. And then that changed the society because it became more creative, access to content was different. You know, those are the products that really, and the brands that really made the big difference. That is what we call the trickle up.
In some way, all the products, they try to move, like more social marketing looks like, they try to move in that direction. So try to highlight more society instead of the product? Or?
So not everybody can do it. Not everybody should do it. I mean, if you're selling nails to build houses, you're not going to go anywhere up there.
But for example, this year, no? It has taken to move a little bit with society in some way.
Very good example.
So, brands that maybe do marketing campaigns try to catch the attention of people with, I mean, things close to society in some way.
Exactly, because the moment you go up here, you start touching emotion. And as we talked about before, your decisions and things are being driven by your emotion. So when you order a product at the restaurant, you're going to go for that one versus any other one because that brand is totally different. And your emotions are telling you this is what I feel in this moment, like the people on that piece of advertising. Any questions, any comments so far?
Well, that might confuse the customer because, for example, El Pozo made an advertisement about how people are nowadays very sensitive to jokes. So what does have a relationship with what they're selling? Like, that might confuse the consumer.
Very good point. That's actually a very common mistake. If you don't do it really well, people are going to say, so why is this company that sells meat talking about jokes? It makes no sense. So you may share it because it's funny, but when you're at the supermarket, it's not going to make you buy the product. So maintaining the link through that is key. And it's really, really hard to do. Every brand would like to be emotional and would like to produce a piece of advertising like that. But if it has nothing to do with the brand, to just produce a video that people are going to share. And when they ask, so what was the video about? They're not going to name the brand. They're not going to talk about that brand. So the video that you saw, it doesn't talk about Dove. But this was a piece of a much bigger campaign that was all driven on the point that we talked about before. So your point is right. You know, when agencies and marketeers put together campaigns, the risk of going high and start trying to hit emotions and losing the reason why and losing the role of the product, it just disappears. The same way, if you're always talking about the product up here and you don't tell people why they need to drink it, it's a problem. It happened with Coca-Cola. For a number of years, it was telling people, you know, the big role of the product, but they forgot about telling people how good it tastes on a hot day. And people forget about that. Any questions? So, let's think about now what components good marketing have. I'll tell you some of the ingredients. If you're in a kitchen, you need good ingredients to cook good marketing. So let me tell you a few of them. The first one is stories. You know, and the concept of a story is something that you can repeat to somebody else, and you enjoy telling that story to somebody else. Stories are as old as humankind. That picture of people gathering around a fireplace, that picture happened in the caves with the prehistoric men. You know, after the hunting day, they all gather in the cave, turn on the fire, they could relax, no animal would attack them, and they would tell each other stories about how they hunted the animal. They will teach their kids stories. That's how information was passed from generations to generations. That picture could have been taken last week or or last summer, you guys on the beach after the day, you light up the fireplace and you all gather, you eat, you drink, and you tell stories, you tell jokes. That is how you like to tell stories. And that is Facebook, that is Instagram, that is Snapchat. Same thing. We're human beings, we like to tell stories in the form of text, in the form of a picture, in the form of a video, but we like to tell a story. That's how our brains work. We like to find a reason why something happened and something surprising happened, and then you tell it to somebody else. That is how humans have passed on knowledge for generations. So a product that just tells you something, for the most part, is noise. A product that tells you a story that you can repeat to somebody else, that is a story, and that has a much stronger tie with the brand. So again, you cannot tell a story on an Instagram post, but if you think about how that brand communicates a story, if somebody asks you about this brand, what do you feel about it? If you can put together a story about that brand, about that product, that stays on your head much stronger than if it's just a message. And again, there's some research on neuroscience that proves why stories are more powerful. So when humans, we tell stories to others, our brains segregate dopamine. And that creates a state of your brain that you're more alert, you're more curious, and you're listening much better. And that enhances your memory. So you're going to be able to not only listen, but memorize that story much better. So 2 weeks later, you will remember that story if your brain segregated those substances that made you curious about that story. The other one is what we call the brand DNA. You know what the DNA is what defines you, who you are, what you stand for. So that is a component that is very important for a brand. You could define the DNA of good brands. So what is the DNA of Apple? Tell me. Give me attributes of the DNA of the brand Apple.
Innovation.
Come on, more.
Creative. Different.
Different.
Luxury.
So all of those attributes, if I asked you the same question 15 years ago, provided that you were old enough to understand those attributes, they would have been the same. Because the brand keeps its DNA constant over time. The way brands relate with people is the same way as we relate with other people. If you have a friend which today is like this, but next week is a completely different person, over time will you trust that person? No. You trust somebody who is somehow consistent with the way they are. You get to know them, you understand them, and that person you can trust because you know how they are. It's the same thing with brands. A brand that is schizophrenic and changes direction, and now it's this, and now it tries to be something else, it's a brand that is lost. It's looking for an identity. And as a result, you're not going to be able to connect to that brand strong enough. So that is a very important and very difficult thing to do. Because if you define your brand, your DNA wrong, you're going to have to change it because you're wrong about who you are. And that change is going to confuse people. So sometimes you need to force that change and take the hit and redefine who you are, but you need to be very sure that that step is positioning you where you need to be. If you make a change, and then another change, and then another change, and you're trying to correct direction all the time, you're not going to succeed as a brand. Another one is what we call about the visual identity, how you recognize that brand. I really like that. So this is the evolution of Pepsi from 1898 to today. And this is the evolution of Coca-Cola from 85 to 2008. This brand has been consistently boring, if you like, but this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to keep on being from a visual standpoint. Yes, there will be some packaging changes and change here and there, but your logo is the same. This is and like this one, Apple has made some variations, but the visual identity is a very strong message, a very strong element. In the case of Coca-Cola, the glass bottle, not the plastic ones, but the shape that I showed you on the very first slide, that design was created to be recognized in the dark. You turn on the lights, when Coca-Cola company gave the brief to the agency that designed that bottle, they told them, the bottle needs to be recognized in the dark. Somebody holding it will know what it is. Somebody seeing a broken bottle on the floor, of course it is not completely destroyed, but has some shape, we'll be able to tell what it is because of the color of the glass and the curves that it has on the bottle. So the power of visual identity is very, very strong. Because again, we as humans, we recognize shapes. And we recognize those shapes with our emotional brain. We identify things very quickly. Remember that from the very early days, the human had to recognize an animal from another one, because one could kill you, the other one you could eat. So that speed of recognition stays with our brains. So that is why the visual identity of brands is so important. The other one is audio signature. You know, brands have developed jingles, and they are so important into how we recognize brands. I saw this one very recently, which I thought it was really clever. So you get the point. You know, the jingle of McDonald's, and this is a way of triggering in people's heads. They need to stop by and have a burger. And for many brands, you will be able to identify the music on their ads, or the jingle, or something that is repeatable. Another element of brands, this is especially true for brands that have been there for a long time, is standing up for what you believe. This is an old one. This is from the late, I think it's 69. The context of the society in the United States, the fight of the black people to be at the same terms in society as the white, that was very strong. Dr. Martin Luther King was murdered, and he was sort of the example of that very strong movement. So society back then in the U.S. was divided into two. You know, the people that thought that white were superior and black people had less rights or less, role in society, had to be changed, and black people were fighting for that. That caused an element of disruption and tension between the society, which little by little started coming together again. So in that moment of division, the Coca-Cola company launched this ad. It's a very simple picture that hides some details. No, it's black and white kids, young people sitting on a bench, just having a Coke, laughing, and having a good time together. There's several elements. That bench, what's called a segregation bench, it was a bench only for black people. And the fact that they're all drinking the same product, they're all laughing, enjoying the same moment, was a very strong message at a moment of division. The society was divided into two, and here stood a brand that one of their values, one of their DNA, was togetherness, was not in agreement with that division in society. So they came this, telling people, we're all equal, this is the same product for everyone. And this one was one of the most successful pieces of advertising. It's just a photograph. It came on print and on billboards, but it was controversial. Some people didn't agree with it, but for the most part, it placed Coca-Cola in a way that people understood that this is what this company, this is what this brand stands for. The modern version of this is this ad. I don't know if you guys seen this one. The US is going through a very similar moment right now, where a lot of tension, racial tensions, the political situation, we're not going to get into the details of that, but you can feel it. I have lived there the last 3 years, and I can tell you that it's more than what you see in the news. You can feel the tension between the races, and black people are standing up and say, we've gone through this already. We deserve the same thing as everybody else. There have been some cases reported on police aggression, black people being arrested just because they're black in a situation of a crime, sometimes even shot without being asked what's going on. And that has triggered a movement of the same thing. So sports athletes, in particular basketball and football players, when the national anthem plays before the game, they kneel down. They put down their knee in a sign of protest about what's going on. Now, the president is against that, and he interprets it as an aggression and a violation of the integrity of the anthem. But these people are still protesting. They're not in agreement with what's going on in the country, and they want to be heard. So Nike has been supporting a number of these sportsmen, and instead of saying we don't know anything about this, we just sell shoes, they say no, we stand for this, and they came out with that. What happened is the value of the company multiplied within a month of that. Nike started selling shoes like crazy. People were burning the shoes in protest to Nike, but those shoes were sold. So, in essence, what the company was doing, they were standing up for something that they believe. You may agree or may not agree with it, but this brand is standing up for something. And that is something that is hard to do, and it takes courage to do. Another one is standing out. Today, the amount of noise, advertising noise in the market is just crazy. You're bombarded all the time with advertising and ads and this and this and this and this. Most of them you don't even pay attention. But sometimes something comes out that catches your attention. Something as silly as a supermarket selling products that you pick up at the door can do this.
I'm not Michael.
No, don't worry, he calls everyone Michael.
So in a time where supermarkets are suffering, especially in the US, because over there most people buy things online and get them delivered home, it's easier. These guys are trying to fight for their existence. So they have managed to combine, on a very expensive commercial by the way, to combine the popular culture and movies with the concept of picking your products at the door of the supermarket. So they came up with this, and this thing is being shared right now in the US like crazy. Not because it's Walmart, not because the idea of picking up your bags at the supermarket is different or smart or anything, but they have managed to combine it in a way that actually is funny. People now are talking about Walmart in a cool way. Walmart is not a cool supermarket by any means, but this is bringing them to a level that they were not in before, because they're able to do this kind of thing. So, in essence, at the very end of the day, brands connect people with products. That is the combination. You manage to connect a product with a person, you're creating a brand. We create those relationships with those brands the same way as we connect with others. So if you know how people connect with each other, you know how to do marketing. That's why Stafford told me back in 2007, doing marketing is easy. We all know how to do it. Our emotional brains are making our decisions. We're not. We're not in control about our behavior, whether we like to accept it or not. Emotions drive that behavior. And the difference between noise, advertising noise, and value, business value, and dollars or euros is good marketing. That's at the end of the day. Any questions? That's it, I'm finished.
Otra cosa